The porcelain of the guest bathroom sink was cold against my palms, but my skin was burning. It was a feverish, prickly heat that started at the back of my neck and crawled down my spine. I stared into the small wicker wastebasket I had just emptied. There, resting on top of a discarded makeup wipe and a crumbled tissue, was a plastic stick. A pregnancy test. 2 bold pink lines. My breath hitched, turning into a sharp wheeze in the silence of the large house. I was 7 months pregnant. My belly was a heavy, prominent drum beneath my silk robe. I hadn't taken a test in 6 months. And I certainly hadn't used the guest bathroom downstairs, the one strictly reserved for visitors. Or, more specifically, for the one visitor who had been living in our home for the past 6 weeks. The front door slammed shut downstairs, shaking the crystal chandelier in the hallway. "Genevieve, darling?" Alistair's voice boomed, rich and baritone, the voice I had fallen in love with 10 years ago. "We're back. Saskia had a craving for pickles, can you believe it?" Laughter followed, her laughter, light, tinkling, and sickeningly sweet. I gripped the edge of the sink so hard my knuckles turned the color of old bone. The smell of lavender potpourri, usually so calming, now made bile rise in my throat. I looked at my own reflection in the mirror, eyes wide, face pale, hand instinctively clutching my own unborn child. They weren't just laughing, they were celebrating, and I was standing upstairs, holding the evidence that was about to shatter my entire world into a million jagged pieces. To understand how I ended up freezing in that bathroom, clutching a piece of plastic that signaled the end of my life as I knew it, you have to understand the silence. For 10 years, Alistair and I lived in a silence that was both expensive and deafening. We were the golden couple of our circle. Alistair was a high-end architect, the kind who designed glass boxes for tech billionaires in the hills. I was the founder of Velvet and Vine, a boutique interior design firm catering to the same clientele. We had the sprawling estate, the Teslas in the driveway, and the vacations in the Maldives. But the house was quiet, too quiet. We had tried for a baby for 8 of those 10 years, 4 rounds of IVF, 2 miscarriages that tore pieces of my soul away, leaving me hollowed out and weeping on the bathroom floor, while Alistair stood in the doorway, looking helpless and eventually distant. When I finally turned 39, I had given up. I told Alistair, "No more. I can't take the needles, the hormones, the hope that kills you." And then, a miracle, a natural conception. When the doctor confirmed it, I didn't cry. I just sat there stunned, listening to the rapid whoosh, whoosh of a heartbeat that sounded like a galloping horse. Alistair was ecstatic, or so I thought. He bought me a diamond tennis bracelet. He painted the nursery himself, a soft sage green. He rubbed my feet. For the first 5 months, it was like we were newlyweds again. The silence was finally filled with talk of names, cribs, and the future. Then came the phone call. It was a Tuesday evening. Rain was lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows of our living room. Alistair hung up his phone, his face drawn into a mask of concern that I would later learn was an Academy Award-winning performance. "It's my cousin," he said, pouring himself a scotch. His hand trembled slightly. "Saskia, you remember her from the wedding photos? The one who lived in France?" I asked, looking up from my knitting. I was trying to make a blanket, though my fingers were clumsy. "Yes, she's in a bad way, Genevieve. Her business in Paris collapsed. She's going through a messy breakup. She has nowhere to go and no liquidity until her assets are unfrozen. She's flying into the city tonight." I felt a twinge of sympathy. I had always prided myself on being a generous hostess. "Well, book her a suite at the Four Seasons, darling. Put it on the company card." Alistair shook his head, the ice clinking in his glass. "She's fragile. She needs family. I told her she could stay here, in the guest wing." I paused. The guest wing was on the ground floor, separated from the main living areas, but still, I was 6 months pregnant. I was swollen, tired, and nesting. I wanted privacy. Alistair, is that wise, with the baby coming? He crossed the room and knelt beside my chair, placing a hand on my knee. His eyes were pleading. It's only for a few weeks, Jen. Please, for me? She's the only family I have left on my mother's side. How could I say no? I was carrying our miracle. I felt benevolent. I wanted to put good karma into the universe. Okay, I sighed, stroking his hair, but only for a few weeks. If I could go back to that moment, I would have thrown his scotch into the fireplace and locked the doors. Saskia arrived the next day. She wasn't what I expected. In my memory, from blurry photos seen years ago, she was plain. The woman standing in my foyer was anything but plain. She was around 30, with hair the color of spun gold and eyes that were a startling icy blue. She wore a trench coat that looked expensive but distressed, and she carried a single battered Louis Vuitton duffel bag. "Genevieve," she breathed, dropping the bag and embracing me. She smelled of rain and something musky, like sandalwood and secrets. "You are a saint, truly." She pulled back and looked at my stomach. Her gaze lingered there a second too long. It wasn't a look of warmth. It was a look of assessment, like she was measuring furniture for a room she planned to renovate. "And look at you," she cooed, her voice dropping. Glowing, positively maternal. "Welcome, Saskia," I said, ignoring the strange prickle on the back of my neck. "Make yourself at home." The first week was subtle. It was a masterclass in boundary erosion. It started with small things. I would come downstairs in the morning to find her sitting at the breakfast island, drinking coffee from my favorite mug, the handmade ceramic one Alistair had bought me in Japan. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said when I stared at it. "Is this yours? It just felt so right in my hand." Then it was the food. I was on a strict diet for the baby. High protein, organic vegetables, no spicy foods because of the heartburn. One night, I came home from a prenatal yoga class to find the kitchen filled with the pungent, spicy aroma of curry. "Alistair mentioned he missed real spice," Saskia said, chopping chilies at the counter. She was wearing one of Alistair's old university t-shirts. It hung off her shoulder, exposing a strap of black lace. "I hope you don't mind, I made a separate plain salad for you." Alistair sat at the table, watching her cook with a look I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't just hunger for food, it was fascination. "It smells delicious, doesn't it, Jen?" Alistair asked, not looking at me. "I can't eat that, Alistair. You know the heartburn keeps me up all night." "That's why I made the salad," Saskia chirped, sliding a bowl of dry lettuce toward me. I ate the leaves in silence while they laughed about stories from their childhood. Stories I had never heard, involving summers at a lake house I didn't know existed. I felt like the ghost in my own kitchen. By the third week, the atmosphere in the house had shifted from uncomfortable to oppressive. I was getting larger by the day. My ankles were swollen, my back ached, and I felt unattractive and heavy. Saskia, on the other hand, seemed to be blooming. She walked around the house in silk slips and cashmere sweaters, always perfectly made up, always smelling of that musky perfume. One afternoon, I came home early from a site visit. The house was quiet. I walked past the study door and heard low voices. "She's suspicious, Allie. I can tell." Saskia's voice. "She's not suspicious, she's hormonal," Alistair's voice replied, dismissive and cool. "She's wrapped up in the nursery. She notices nothing." "I don't like hiding it," she whispered. "Just a little longer, until the assets are transferred. We stick to the plan." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Assets? Plan? I pushed the door open. Alistair and Saskia jumped apart. They had been standing over the architectural blueprints on his desk. They weren't touching, but the air between them was electrically charged. "Genevieve!" Alistair exclaimed, his face flushing. "You're home early." "What plan?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What assets?" Saskia didn't look flustered. She smiled, a slow, cat-like expression. "The renovation, silly. Alistair is helping me design a small studio for my art." I want to buy a place once my divorce settlement comes through. Alistair nodded vigorously. Yes, I didn't want to bore you with it, darling. You have enough on your plate with the baby. I looked between them. It was a plausible lie. Alistair was an architect. Of course he would help her. But the tone I had heard, the intimacy. I see, I said, placing a hand on my belly as the baby kicked hard, a painful reminder of my vulnerability. I'm going to lie down. As I walked up the stairs, I felt their eyes on my back. I knew, with the deep, primal intuition of a mother, that I was in danger. But I couldn't prove it. Not yet. The turning point came 4 days later. The incident with the gift. A package arrived by courier. I signed for it. It was a small velvet box from Van Cleef and Arpels. My heart soared. Alistair had remembered our anniversary was coming up next week. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Inside was a necklace, a delicate gold chain with a pendant in the shape of a lily. My name is Genevieve. My favorite flower is the peony. Saskia. Her name, I suddenly remembered Alistair mentioning once years ago, meant protector of mankind, but her middle name... I rushed to the library, where the family genealogy book was kept. Alistair was obsessed with his lineage. I found her entry, Saskia Lily Vance. The room spun. He'd bought her jewelry, expensive jewelry. While I was carrying his child, waddling around with swollen feet, he was buying $5,000 necklaces for his cousin. I didn't confront him, not immediately. I needed to be smart. I was the one with the trust fund, the inheritance from my grandmother that had funded Alistair's firm in the beginning. But our finances were entangled. If I left now, he could claim I was unstable. He could fight for custody. I put the box back in the courier bag and resealed it carefully. I placed it on the hall table. That night at dinner, Alistair handed the box to Saskia. "A little welcome gift," he said smoothly, "to help you feel settled." Saskia opened it and gasped. "Oh, Alistair, it's beautiful." She looked at me, her eyes glittering. "Isn't it exquisite, Genevieve?" "Lovely," I said, cutting into my steak with surgical precision. "A lily, how appropriate." Alistair froze for a fraction of a second. His eyes darted to me, then back to Saskia. He didn't know if I knew. The uncertainty was my first weapon. Which brings us to the bathroom, the cold open. Finding that pregnancy test changed everything. Saskia was pregnant. And suddenly, the pieces clicked together. The pickles, the nausea she claimed was stress, the way she touched her stomach when she thought no one was looking. But who was the father? Her ex in Paris? No. The timeline didn't fit. She had been here 6 weeks. A positive test like that, dark lines, usually meant at least 4 or 5 weeks along. If it was her ex, she would have known in Paris. Unless she hadn't just arrived 6 weeks ago. I went to my bedroom and locked the door. I grabbed my laptop. I logged into our shared cell phone account, something Alistair thought I never checked because I was bad with technology. I wasn't bad with technology. I was just busy. I pulled up the call logs. There were calls to a French number going back 6 months. Long calls. Video calls. But then I checked the location data on Alistair's phone. He had gone on a business trip to Seattle 3 months ago. I cross-referenced the dates. There were no calls to France during those 3 days, but there were charges on our joint credit card, the one he rarely used, for a hotel in Montreal. Saskia wasn't from Paris. She had been living in Montreal. He had visited her 3 months ago. My hands shook so hard I could barely type. I checked the credit card statement for that trip deeply. A dinner for 2, a spa treatment, and a charge at a fertility clinic in Montreal. The world stopped. The silence of the house came rushing back, roaring in my ears. A fertility clinic. I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being replaced. They were trying to have a baby. But why? I was already pregnant with his child. Then the darkest thought of all surfaced. I was 39. My pregnancy was high risk. I had preeclampsia markers. The doctors had warned Alistair that I might not make it to full term, or that there could be complications. Was he hedging his bets? Or worse? Was he planning to take my baby and raise it with her, or was he hoping I would die? Genevieve? The handle of the bedroom door rattled. It was Alistair. Genevieve, are you in there? Saskia and I are going to watch a movie. Do you want to join? I closed the laptop. I took a deep breath. I had to become an actress. I had to be better than him. I'm just resting, darling, I called out, my voice sounding surprisingly steady. I'll be down in a minute. I stood up. I looked in the mirror. I wiped the single tear that had escaped. You are not a victim, I whispered to my reflection. You are a mother, and you are going to burn them to the ground. The next 2 weeks were a blur of calculated deception. I hired a private investigator, a woman named Beatrice, whom my lawyer recommended. She's expensive, my lawyer said, but she's a shark. Beatrice found everything. Saskia wasn't his cousin. They were distant relatives by marriage, twice removed, legally unrelated. They had been childhood sweethearts, a teenage romance that ended when Alistair wanted to pursue wealth and Saskia wanted to be an artist. But the real bombshell was the financial trail. Alistair was siphoning money from our joint accounts into a shell company in the Cayman Islands. The renovation Saskia mentioned, he was buying a property, not a studio for her, a mansion, in her name, with my money. And the pregnancy, Beatrice confirmed it. Saskia was 10 weeks pregnant. The timing matched the Montreal trip perfectly. I sat in Beatrice's office, looking at the photos of them kissing in a park in Montreal. What do you want to do, Genevieve? Beatrice asked, lighting a slim cigarette. I want to ruin him, I said. I want him to leave my house with nothing but the clothes on his back, and I want her to know that she picked the wrong woman to rob. Good, Beatrice smiled. Then we wait for the baby shower. The baby shower was scheduled for the following Sunday. It was the social event of the season, 150 guests, catered by the best chef in the city. Alistair had insisted on it. We need to celebrate our happiness, he had said, squeezing my hand for the cameras. Saskia was there, of course. She wore a flowing blue dress that concealed her small bump, posing as the doting cousin-in-law. The garden was decorated in creams and golds. A string quartet played Vivaldi. My friends, wealthy, sharp-tongued women, cooed over my belly. You look radiant, Jen, my friend Cordelia said, handing me a glass of sparkling apple juice. She leaned in. But why is she hovering around Alistair like a moth to a flame? Watch the show, Cordelia, I whispered. Just watch. The climax of the party was supposed to be a video montage of our journey. Alistair had prepared it. Or rather, he thought he had. I had swapped the USB drive 5 minutes before the speeches began. Alistair tapped his champagne glass with a silver spoon. The crowd hushed. Friends, family, he began, flashing that $1 million smile. Thank you for coming. Genevieve and I have waited so long for this miracle. This baby represents our love, our patience, and our future. Saskia beamed at him from the front row. I put together a little video, Alistair said, pointing the remote at the giant projection screen set up under the marquee, to share our memories. He pressed play. The music started, a sweet lullaby. The first photo was of our wedding. The crowd sighed. Then the screen flickered. The music cut out. It was replaced by a scratchy audio recording. She's suspicious, Allie, I can tell. The crowd gasped. It was Saskia's voice, blooming through the high-quality speakers. She's not suspicious. She's hormonal. She notices nothing. Alistair's voice. Alistair froze. He jabbed the remote, trying to stop it, but I had disabled the remote receiver. The video was playing from the laptop locked in the AV booth. On the screen, a new image appeared, not a wedding photo. It was a bank statement. Highlighted in red were transfers totaling $1 million. $2 million to Saskia Vance. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like a wave. Then the photo from Montreal. Alistair and Saskia, locked in a passionate embrace outside the fertility clinic. Then the medical report. Patient, Saskia Vance. Donor, Alistair Blackwood. The silence in the garden was absolute. The string quartet had stopped playing. A bird chirped, sounding loud as a gunshot. Alistair turned to me, his face the color of ash. Genevieve, I can explain. It's a mistake. It's a deepfake. I stood up from my throne-like wicker chair. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I picked up the microphone. It's not a deepfake, Alistair, I said, my voice calm, projecting to every corner of the garden. It's the truth. You invited everyone here to celebrate a new life. Well, surprise, you're having two. I pointed at Saskia. She was shrinking into her chair, covering her face with her hands. Saskia is pregnant with Alistair's child, I announced, and he paid for it with my inheritance. The crowd erupted. My mother stood up and looked ready to charge at Alistair with her cane. Alistair, I continued, you have breached the infidelity clause of our prenuptial agreement. My lawyers are currently changing the locks on the house. Your access to our joint accounts was frozen 10 minutes ago. Security is waiting at the front gate to escort you and your mistress off the property. You can't do this, Alistair screamed, his charm dissolving into ugliness. He lunged toward me. 2 large security guards stepped in front of him instantly. And Saskia, I said, looking at her. She finally looked up, her eyes filled with tears of humiliation. The necklace he gave you? The family heirloom? It was charged to my American Express. I'll be taking that back. Get out, I said simply. The walk of shame was long. 150 pairs of eyes watched as Alistair and Saskia were escorted down the gravel path. Alistair was shouting threats. Saskia was sobbing. As the gate clicked shut behind them, I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen, a contraction. Cordelia was at my side in an instant. Jen, are you okay? I took a deep breath, clutching my belly. I think she's ready to come out now. She didn't want to be born while they were still in the house. The labor was hard. It was long and grueling, much like the marriage I had just escaped. But when the doctors placed Serafina on my chest, 20 hours later, the pain vanished. She had my eyes, but she had Alistair's chin. It was a reminder, yes, but it didn't hurt, because she was mine. The legal battle was bloody. Alistair tried to sue for part of the house, claiming he had contributed to its value with his architectural designs. But the evidence Beatrice found, the fraud, the embezzlement, was overwhelming. He faced criminal charges for fraud. Saskia moved back to Montreal. I heard through the grapevine that Alistair never bought her that house. Once the money was cut off, their great romance crumbled under the weight of poverty and blame. He left her before her baby was even born. I didn't rejoice in her suffering. She was a mother now, too, after all. But I didn't pity her either. Karma has a way of addressing the balance. 6 months later, I sat in the nursery. It was no longer sage green. I had repainted it a soft, warm lavender. Serafina was asleep in my arms. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't the empty, oppressive silence of before. It was a peaceful silence, the silence of safety. I looked out the window at the garden where I had burned my marriage to the ground to save my life. The peonies were blooming. I had lost a husband. I had lost the illusion of a perfect life. But as I kissed my daughter's forehead, smelling that sweet, milky scent of a newborn, I knew I had won the only thing that mattered. I had saved myself, and I had saved her. We were free. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones holding the knife. We ignore the red flags, the intuition, the gut feeling, the strange coincidences, because we are afraid of shattering the picture-perfect life we've built. We think that if we just love them enough, if we are patient enough, they will change. Or worse, we convince ourselves that we are crazy, hormonal, or paranoid. But ladies, listen to me. Your intuition is your superpower. It is the guardian angel on your shoulder screaming the truth when your heart wants to stay deaf. If you feel like something is wrong, it probably is. Don't let anyone, not a husband, not a friend, not a cousin, make you doubt your own reality. I chose to walk through the fire alone rather than live in a beautiful house with a man who held my hand while plotting my replacement. And looking at my daughter now, I know it was the best decision of my life. My dears, I pour my heart and soul into these stories, working on this channel every single day to bring you emotions, truth, and perhaps a little bit of wisdom. But this channel is still very young, like a baby that needs care to grow. I need your help and your wise advice. Please, write honestly in the comments. What did you like about this story? What made you angry? What would you have done in Genevieve's place? Your opinion is the law for me. And if this story touched your heart, if you felt Genevieve's pain and her victory, please support my hard work by subscribing to the channel. Let's gather the warmest, wisest circle of friends right here. Thank you. I appreciate every single one of you.